what it taught me at that young age is it's okay to go outside and talk to people and, show them what you got, because if they like it, they will buy it, even from I was 13 or 14-year-old kid at that time.
Mm.
So sales has always kind of been something I'm not afraid of. That really taught me. And I think being an entrepreneur, you're always selling, right? Like, even if you're not in the sales role, you're selling yourself, you're selling your ideas, you're selling whatever. I think it's an essential life skill that my dad taught me, even if he didn't, right, intentionally teach me that.
I don't throw darts at a board. I bet on sure things. Read Sun Tzu, The Art of War. Every battle is won before it's ever fought. Think about it.
Welcome to another episode of the Profitable Property Management Podcast. Today I'm here with none other than DD Lee. Thanks for coming on the show. How you doing,
You're welcome,
DD?
Jordan. Great being here.
Well, good to be with you. It's been a minute since we've seen each other. It feels good to be back on the road, back in the saddle here. DD, for those that don't know, tell us a little bit about the company, where you're located from. Give me some basic stats.
Sure. I am the broker owner of Skyline Properties Group. We're located just 30 minutes north of Atlanta. We have two offices, one 30 minutes north of Atlanta, one 30 minutes south of Atlanta downtown, just to make sure our bases are covered. What was the other question? Sorry.
Head count, door count.
Door count. We manage residential and HOA. Residential, we have roughly 470 units.
Mm-hmm.
And on the HOA side, we have just a shy of 2,000 units right now, about 23 HOA.
Which of those
accounts.
divisions did you start first?
The residential side.
And how long have you been doing HOA?
I started the HOA side about 2011, a year after I started the residential side. And I started the HOA side because through my residential management, we had to work with HOA companies quite a bit, and just realized there was a big hole in the market for good HOA companies. And I believe that's true not just in Atlanta market, but in other markets in general, as I've been talking to some NARPA members about that. So a huge need for like the smaller company to come back with better service, and there are a lot of smaller communities that do not get the level of service just because they're small. So there is space for easy entry, right, for property managers that want to try the HOA side. So yeah, in 2011, I started, took on my first HOA, and it kind of grew from there. An interesting thing about that growth is Georgia is one of those states that forbids property managers from advertising like direct campaign for HOA business. So we can't send out flyers or brochures to a board member.
What was the purpose? What was the intended purpose of that legislation?
They don't want board members to be solicited all the
Bought.
time. So, yeah, solicited. Yes, exactly. Yeah. So most of the growth is from word of mouth and referrals.
Interesting.
Mm-hmm.
What's total headcount for the organization?
Total door count?
No, total headcount, bodies.
For my staff.
People, yeah.
About 10 people.
Got it. And
Mm-hmm.
is there a hard division between who works on HOA versus single family?
There are when it comes to managers, but then we do have some crossovers. So on the residential side, including myself, we have 5 people. And one of them is a VA. And then on the HOA side, we have also 5 people. And one of them is also a VA. So kind of split evenly.
So how did we get here? If we just rewind the clock here, were you one of those little girls that grew up just dreaming of being in residential property management? How did you wind up here?
I wish I were. I would be so much better of a property manager if I were, But no, man, where should I start?
Well, where are you from originally?
Okay, we're going to go that far.
Yeah.
All right.
Let's do it.
Originally from China. And I moved here when I was 12. Spoke no English, right? Knew my ABCs, And
Sounds tough.
yes, and it was a interesting process because we first moved to Murray, Kentucky, which is like a small town. My entire elementary school, there were 2 black kids and then me. There were no international students at all. They didn't even know what a ESL program, English as Second Language, right? So I got thrown into the curriculum right away. And of course, not knowing English, I just, seemed really dumb. But I was really good at math. Like math was the one class I had A's in. And at the end of 6th grade, the principal came and talked to my parents, and they said, if she didn't speak English, by the time she comes back from summer, we're gonna have to hold her back a year. And in Chinese culture, that is like the
Big
most,
no-no.
right, shameful thing. So that summer, I memorized the dictionary. Every single day, I would memorize 30 vocabulary words, and by the end of the summer, I had I could speak English, and the school had no idea what happened. So fast forward to 1996, Atlanta had the Olympics. So my dad graduated, got his MBA, then we moved to Atlanta. He started his own business. So he was an entrepreneur, he's an entrepreneur. And I kind of grew up in that. He raised me to, always look for opportunities.
What kind of an entrepreneur was he? What was his business?
He's in the equestrian wholesale business.
Oh, interesting. Buying and selling horses.
Equestrian products.
Okay.
So he's at the time when he started his business, there were no Chinese manufacturers in that business because, cowboys,
right?
They bought American-made, right, USA-made things. So my dad's like, well, there's no Chinese competition. I'm going to come in and bring Chinese-made products. And so he grew his business from there, and his products in every tack shop in the country. And but before he found that business, he tried every other product, fiber optic Christmas trees and miracle groom, spray on cleaner for your pets. And I tested the market for him by selling all these products door to door.
Oh, beautiful.
We lived in the apartments. And so I attribute my sales.
Wow, that's special.
Yes. So fast forward to Atlanta. He started his own business, and I've been in Atlanta ever since '96. Went to school, went to Georgia Tech for computer science, and knew I didn't like computer science after my first year. And then my dad said, you have to finish. We're only paying for 4 years of school. After you finish, you can do whatever you want. So then I graduated from Tech in 4 years, of course, and then got my first job working for AT&T. It was there that I met my mentor for real estate. So then I invested in 2 rental properties. After first year of working, responsible thing to do with your salary. So I bought 2 rental properties, and then I was like, this is great. Retirement strategy was buy 2 rental properties a year. In 15 years, you would have 30 properties.
You're set.
Right? And then in 15 years, you sell half of your portfolio, use the proceeds from the sale to pay off the rest of your 15.
Free cash flow.
Yeah, then you own the 15 free and clear. It's like, man, that's my retirement strategy. I'll retire in 15 years. And then, but buying 2 properties a year just seemed too slow for me. So I found a couple partners, and we started buying properties quickly. And we had 12 properties within 2 years. And I managed those properties. I handled the management part. And I did everything wrong. At that time, it was 2003, 2004. I had no idea that property managers existed. So I did all the management myself, learned all about evictions. I had tenants owing me tens of thousands because I had, I bought into their stories, their sob stories. Anyway, I just did everything you're not supposed to, right? And so, but I learned all my lessons. And in 2008, when the market crashed, a lot of my friends and family came to me and said, hey, you know how to manage rental properties. Will you manage for me? So I knew at that time that property management was going to become a bigger need, right? There's like a lot of demand in the market. So I went and got my broker's license and put it with my my own management firm at that time that that managed my own portfolio. And then the rest is history.
So how were you impacted by '08 and that whole meltdown? Did that impact your?
It did. It did. I had to do some deed in lieu and foreclosures because, you know, part of the portfolio was bought with variable rate loans that country
Arms.
country arms forgot the company that did it, but yeah, they put me in that program, and I trusted the mortgage lender so much because she was the mom of my real estate broker. And so I was like, yeah, sign me up for whatever loan program you got, the best one. She's like, oh yeah, this one's like so cheap. You'll enjoy the low rates. It's variable.
Oh, brutal.
Yeah, so brutal. And I learned my hard lesson there is never sign anything without reading it yourself. And but yeah, I got burnt on that. So it's okay. It's all like lessons in life. I'm smarter because of it.
Yeah, no doubt. I've had a lot of painful lessons that have
Right?
scaled and been worthwhile at a large enough scale. So all that to say, did you have some identity around wanting to be an entrepreneur when you were younger, or was it just kind of a series of steps that took you there?
I had no idea what I wanted to be as a kid. And I just kind of did as my dad told me. One of the blessings is I didn't think very much for myself. I was just kind of like, my dad's like, hey, take these products and go sell them door to door. Okay. So it was lack of fear or lack of like self, what do you call it? Like thinking. But what it taught me at that young age is it's okay to go outside and talk to people and, show them what you got, because if they like it, they will buy it, even from I was 13 or 14-year-old kid at that time. So so sales has always kind of been something I'm not afraid of. And, that really taught me. And I think being an entrepreneur, you're always selling, right? Like even if you're not in the sales role, you're selling yourself, you're selling your ideas, you're selling whatever. I think it's an essential life skill that my dad taught me, even if he didn't intentionally teach me that.
Undoubtedly. Yeah. In
Yeah,
business, they say revenue solves all problems.
Yeah.
I definitely relate to that
Yeah.
idea that sales is an overarching skill set, and it's something that needs to get pushed lower into the organization, even for folks in non-sales roles. As you think about where you're at now and the business being more stable, there's more scale, what lights you up right now? What's been getting you excited in the business as of late?
So we've been experiencing a lot of fast growth, right? And this past year, we've been fortunate to develop really strong relationships with some investors that are now aggressively acquiring portfolios. And
Institutional, individual?
not institutional, foreign investor groups that have just grown bigger and bigger. Once they find a property management company that they can trust,
They'll lean into the market
then
more.
yes, then they'll go out and tell their friends and colleagues, and then the next thing you know, you're getting a lot of investors reaching out to you. So that's how we grew. And the exciting thing about it is the growth, right? I've designed my processes and hired with the intention of growing to 500 doors. I was actually at 300 doors the year prior. And I was like, yeah, we're good. Like, I know I overhire a little bit, overstaff a little bit. But my intention is to not have to change anything in my system, in my staffing, until we reach 500 doors. But didn't realize that 500 doors would come,
So quickly?
Really, it was within 2 months of having to do that. So the exciting thing is that growth. But then that comes with challenge of scaling, right? Because there are some things we did have to change to accommodate the growth and challenge to me is always like an exciting thing. I don't do well with boredom. You probably don't either. It's a disease.
relatable.
I always think it's like a disease.
It's a gift, maybe at its best. It's a gift
Sometimes
to explore and
sometimes
try
it's a
new
gift.
things. It's stimulating, if nothing else.
Yes, for sure.
So when you are making some of these changes here, what did hold true about that premise that you could staff up and scale into 470? What aspects of the infrastructure have really been a blessing and gone according to plan, and what aspects of the infrastructure have gotten wobbly?
I think anything that's like an automation tool, right? Tools that can, if we just plug information in to the tool, then it just take us through the next steps without us having to like shuffle papers or make calls or even have to text each other. It just lets us know, hey, this is the next step, or it just does it for us, right? I love that. And those tools have really been essential for us to be able to scale without changing much. I can talk about like different tools that we use.
Sure,
right?
yeah.
I mean, Lee Simple, for example,
Awesome.
we use Lee Simple for handling new prospects, prospective owners, any leads that come through our website goes straight to Lee Simple. And then my BDM, it'll reach out to my BDM. My BDM will contact the lead and plug in the information to Lee Simple. And then Lee Simple starts sending out these like follow-up emails without the BDM even having to touch anything. And it takes us through the sales process very nicely. And then we have, Process Street to do the operations side of things. Once a tenant is approved in the process, it kind of takes us through that process automatically. Property mailed for maintenance. I think all of these tools that help us automate the different pieces, the more we have, the less, we have to do as a staff. So I think that's key to be able to scale without having to change much in staffing.
So those tools have scaled well as you've added
Completely.
these units.
Yeah.
And
Yeah,
so what about the flip side? What's gotten wobbly?
It's the transition piece is probably the hardest part, just because we're still kind of in the midst of it. Making sure, well, I'll tell you the most challenging part of getting of adopting a portfolio, whether someone's acquiring a portfolio or, like in my case, investor just dumps a portfolio into our laps. The challenge of it is to figure out the true state of that portfolio and doing all of the digging and like pulling the paperwork, cross-checking the leases, right? And the tenant's contact information, making sure the rent roll is correct. All of that is extremely painful. In our case, the previous management company of this portfolio, she stole the security deposits.
Oh no.
Yeah.
Brutal.
Have not turned those in, and we don't know where she is. And she kept all of the August rent.
So what does the recourse look like?
Yeah. No, I mean, she needs to go to jail, in my opinion,
Well, maybe she does. I'm sure she
I don't know.
clearly does. But
Yeah.
in terms of making the money holder whole,
Yeah. So security deposits are tenants' money, right? So in this case, the owners are now responsible for all of that money, which is a lot. And it's really unfortunate. And they've hired an attorney to go after this, property manager, but
wow.
can't find her. Can't find her. You can't get the money back. Wow. And then, of course, everything that they did was on paper. There was nothing electronic. They didn't use any software where we can just click download. So everything, all of the lease agreements, maintenance records, everything is on hard copy, which is amazing for today. For people to manage the hundreds of properties without the assistance of a software. But that's what they did. I don't think they were NARPA members. So honestly, if that's the biggest challenge. Like once we get past the transition stage, I don't think there will be a whole lot of issues. the tenants, there's a learning curve because we're now coming in and say, hey, everything's online. They're used to going to a leasing office in their community and dropping off rent or signing paperwork. And we got rid of that leasing office. We're able to take everything online. And for the investor, they love it because now we can turn that leasing office into another income generating property. But yeah, it's a learning curve for the residents, right? And then educating them on like things like using Meld and using online, right, rent payment. Most of them love it. And then there are the older ones that we just need to coach them a little bit, but that's it. Nothing from an operations perspective. We're holding up pretty well.
That's great. So hopefully it stabilizes, and then a new goal, and then you accomplish the new goal, and then another goal and another goal. That's kind of the life of an entrepreneur. How do you think about this balance between hitting goals and just being happy, independent of your worth as associated with your ability to hit goals?
Absolutely.
What does that look like to navigate that for you at this point in your career?
That is a great question, Jordan. Man, because that's a question that I always ask myself, is what is enough for me, right? And I always ask that question for like my peers and colleagues too, like people I see that are going through burnout. I say, why are you killing yourself? Like, when is it enough? And to me, what I have right now is enough. It is. If everything just like went away, I would still be okay. I don't think that I've ever worried about where the money is going to come from. Like I will find a way to, money is like, there's opportunities everywhere. We're fortunate to be in this country. And that part, like I'm never worried about. I think what drives me is, at this point is just being able to propel people around me that I care about to the next level, right? Like it's all about helping someone else at this point.
Lifting up the people around you.
What can I do for someone else? And for me, having a good organization is going to be helpful to my staff. It's going to be helpful to the clients and the customers that we serve. That's really what drives it. It's like, how do we be better? How do I be better for my team? And how does my team be better for my clients and customers?
When you talk to other NARPM members or other property managers in general, and I think it's really broader than that. I think it's small business owners. Where do you see folks shooting themselves in the foot? There are really painful things. They come in from the outside. You can't see it. Economy changes, COVID. And then there's a self-inflicted gunshot wound. In the category of the latter, what comes to mind for you of largely avoidable problems that some folks still get caught up in?
Yes. I think a lot of people let their own fear of the unknown and also what they think might happen, right? But not necessarily the reality, keep them from taking action. So a lot of people say, I'll just, random example is why I can't charge fees for this. No one's going to want to pay it, but that's because they can't see themselves doing it, but it doesn't mean that people won't do it. I think that's, to me, like that's the first thing that came to my mind is letting their own perception of what won't work keep them from getting that next big thing.
Can you think of any examples of limiting beliefs for yourself that you were able to work through and it caused a real shift?
All the time. I mean, it's a constant, like, you have self-doubt. Yeah. And I think self-doubt is always a part of the equation for entrepreneurs. And, before you implement a new service or you charge a new fee or you take on a new 200 door portfolio overnight, you're always like, oh man, are we gonna be able to do this? And it's like, well, you don't know till you try. So I think, it happens to me on a constant basis, is that the doubt of saying no one would buy the service, no one would pay this fee, and then just getting over that is saying, if it fails, what could be the worst thing? We just wasted a bunch of time. That's all, right? And that's okay because we tried. Like, I did try one thing recently last year. I tried the zero, no management fee
Concept.
concept.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, I did this whole like slide deck presentation for my team. I videotaped, all these like sales pitches to our to potential clients, and did all of that. And I paid Google AdWords, did everything, set up Lead Simple, like the process for it, and we got a lot of leads. I paid a lot of Google Ads money, but none of those leads converted. And I realized that when you present two services, like two things a client has to compare, and they have to do math. And that it didn't work because they had to do math. And you tell them, hey, there is zero management fee for all the basic stuff like collection, things that we do on a monthly basis. You don't have to pay management fee for those. But anytime we have to do anything extra, right, outside of those, you just pay a fee. At the end of the year, you'll end up paying a little bit less on the zero fee structure, but they don't get it, and they always think there's strings attached.
There's a bait and switch somewhere in there.
Yes. So, I mean, things do fail, if you try enough. But it's all right. Right? I'm like, it's all good, team. We'll do something else.
That's part of the thrill, in
Yeah.
my experience.
Yeah.
If nothing is risked, and risk is defined by the possibility of failure, then there's nothing gained. Whether or not it's rational or not, it's hard for me to get out of bed in the morning without having some potentiality for failure. If I just
Right.
knew everything was going to go right, it's kind of like,
Boring.
yeah.
Totally boring.
And I don't think that's fully rational, but I know my own wiring, that thrill and that rush of like, hey, I'm going to jump up in the air and try and do a triple sow cow and land it, but I may fall flat on my face. And when you pull it off, that's where that that fist pump comes from.
Don't get me wrong though. I sure love days where I just have like zero challenges and, but I can't have too many of those days.
Oh, no doubt. You're riding the wave, right? You're up, you're down, you're high, and then you're low.
Yeah.
Bryn here from Lead Simple. I love Lead Simple, but that feels like a given. Instead of telling you why I love it, here's Sarah Hatch from Hatch Property Management.
We're very happy, and I recommend so many people to Lead Simple because I'm like, oh my gosh, it changed our world. It totally changed our whole way of managing properties and staying in contact. It's the best business investment I've ever made.
To learn more and connect with one of my teammates, go to leadsimple.com/podcast today.
So part of that cycle is thinking about the consideration potentially getting out of the business. How do you relate to thinking about that long-term exit? What would it take? What would it look like? What would you do?
Yeah.
What's the mental calculus that you do as you consider that? And invariably you're
Yeah.
approached with those conversations as pretty much everybody is these days.
Absolutely. When I started the business, I didn't start it to sell one day. I didn't know what I was going to do. Like, I didn't have an exit strategy, right? But over the years, talked to much smarter people than me, like CPAs and financial advisors. And they always say, and then of course you read books, business books that always say, hey, even if you don't have the intention of selling your business, build it as you would sell it. And it made a lot of sense to me. So 5 years ago, I started doing things to have a business that is sellable. Doesn't mean I want to, that I wanted to sell or ready to sell, but it would be ready to sell if I wanted to. So some things like starting to hire people to replace the tasks, the work functions that I was doing myself, to just remove myself from the day-to-day operations. Making sure my accounting, like for my company, was, in line, getting monthly P&Ls done, and just setting it up so that if someone were to purchase my company one day, I want to hand it to them like, here you go. It's all ready.
With a bow on it.
With a bow on it. You don't even need me in the middle. So I started doing that 5 years ago, and I'm pretty close to being able to do that.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So when you think about the mental calculus to justify if to pull the trigger, what are the considerations that go through your mind? I mean, for me, I think partly about what else would I do?
Absolutely.
In that regard, how do you weigh those?
Yes. I think, I can't remember how long it was, maybe 3 or 4 years ago. I was approached by a company to purchase my company, which happens a lot in this industry. And I went to a great friend who's a business broker. I said, hey, what do you think about me selling? They're kind of offering me a pretty sweet deal. And he said, well, Dee, you're still young. Like, what are you going to do when you sell your business? I'm like, I don't know. It's a good question. So he said, if you enjoy doing, being in this business and it's growing, keep at it. Keep at it. You'll know when the time is right to sell, or have something else lined up, right? Because for someone like you, you need to stay busy.
Mm-hmm.
So I took his advice, and so yes, what you said is absolutely true. Before I sell, I want to make sure that there is something else that I'm working on, which I am working on several different ventures. Very exciting ones. And the other thing is, you think about the staff, right? What's going to happen. You want to make sure that the company that is going to acquire you has similar cultures, and they appreciate the work that this company that you've built.
That's an interesting one. Many acquirers are transparent about the fact that that's not how this works, and that's really a non-factor, and that likely everybody will be gone. And it's not meant to be aggressive or adversarial. That's just kind of how they operate. It's the policy. They're buying the doors. It's about the platform, blah, blah, blah. What do you see in those conversations? I mean, do you find that most of those conversations kind of come with that implicit undertone, or do you find that some of the potential acquirers, even if you choose not to do it, it would be under the terms and auspices that the staff would be kept around?
That's, it's a direct question I would always ask is, hey, what's your strategy for this company? Like, is their business already located geographically in Atlanta, and they already have a whole system set up? If that's the case, then I know that some of my staff will have to go, right?
They're just going to absorb the doors.
Yes. I mean, they may retain some just to handle the portfolio, but a lot of the positions would be gone, especially if they have the headquarter, right, piece to take care of everything else. But then there are some companies who are, if they're looking to grow into my geographical region, they have nothing there and they need the local staff to kind of run things, then that's a different story. So even if they do say, hey, we're going to retain everyone, you kind of have to look at their current company structure and see how they're operated and their, locations. Then you kind of, you'll as a business person, you're going to know, hey, they won't need everybody on my staff.
Yeah. And you can look at other analogs of transactions that have already been made.
That too.
Go. There are so many other people in this business that have been down that path, and a bunch of others. You mentioned mentorship earlier. Who have been some mentors for you in the business?
That's easy. Robert Locke, who is we call him one of the founding fathers of the Atlanta NARPM chapter. He's been around for a long time, and I took his property manager series, one of the basic series, in 2010. And he, at the end of the class, he's like, if you're wanting to stay in this business, you're not a NARPM member, then you will not make it. He basically said it like that. And so I joined NARPM immediately after that class. And he's still like, a big part of the chapter and big supporter of NARPM. And he's taught like all of the basic foundations of property management to me. So my lease agreements, my management agreements all started with Robert Locke's stuff. And then of course over time, I grew from there. But then there's so many educators that I've learned from and look up to: Michael McCurry, Mike Nelson, Eric Weatherington. Like, I just really enjoyed all of their classes as I was getting into this business.
And you've obviously leaned into NARPM. You're an office holder now.
Yes.
What do you get out of that? For somebody on the outside in, we're at convention. And so it's very clear to a lot of folks here
Yes.
what the upside is, what the benefit is.
Yeah.
But you know just as well as I do, there are sure a lot of folks out there that are not NARPM members.
Yeah.
And something about the nature of the offer hasn't been sufficiently compelling to get them off the couch. How would you articulate the value of not only why somebody should join, but even being involved? From a distance, some folks are like, well, what am I getting out of that? I'm volunteering my time for this organization. I'm already busy. If I'm not working, I want to be with my kids.
Yeah.
What's the pitch or the argument in favor of that level of commitment and involvement?
So when you get involved, you get to spend some really dedicated time with passionate people, right? And when you spend that amount of time together, you're gonna talk about business in detail. So there's benefit to coming to conventions like this. The workshops are great. The general sessions offer some information, but to me, they're like on a broad level, right? They may spark a thought or an idea, but that's as far as it goes for me. If I go to like the workshops or the general sessions, but when you and I are sitting like at a table, planning a meeting or strategic planning, or just hanging out at a social event with your local NARPM chapter, you're going to talk about, hey, I've got this issue, stuck in this process, and I don't know how to do it better. Like, well, how are you doing it today? That's when you really have time to delve into the details of the business and help each other out and give each other ideas. Or, so many times, like, I'll be working on a committee or at a board meeting, and somebody will pipe up and say, hey guys, I found this great vendor and this is what I'm doing with it. What are your thoughts? Like, this is why I love them. This is why I'm thinking about implementing that system or whatever program. And everybody will start chiming in, asking questions. So it's kind of like you have your own personal group of brain trust, but you can't get there until you trust and like those people and you have dedicated time with them, right? So to me, that's kind of the benefit of being involved is now I have like this like group of people that I can call my brothers and sisters in NARPM, my family, right? And we share information with each other and we help each other. And there's like zero judgment on how everyone's doing things. It's just, hey, we share failures and we share successes. And it's just great. But you don't get that by just coming to a convention and not get involved, right? And not you have to like see these people repeatedly to develop that relationship and trust. So that's the benefit of it.
Yeah, there's a lot of joy in those
Oh my gosh,
relationships.
So good.
It's a big part of the.
I mean, you and I, like, we've seen each other. We'll see each other. We run into each other at conferences and conventions, but we haven't really got a chance to sit down and get to know each other. But we did at the speakeasy dinner. It's like, hey, Jordan's a really cool guy. I mean, I know you were a cool guy from hearsay.
Good to know.
Yeah, it's good. It's good. And then I got to know you. It's like, yeah, I enjoy conversations with you. And then, friendship forms. And then next thing, you're talking business or you're sharing, business ideas.
Now, that's an interesting segue. What does it mean to you to see vendors here and showing up? There's obviously vendors, there's all different flavors. There are huge global vendors to which property management is a tick on a dog's back, right? It's just a very small industry.
Yes.
And they may or may not show up. There are vendors that are run by former property managers that couldn't be more embedded. And then there are folks that are somewhere in between that are dedicated to this vertical. The vendor involvement in these things, how does that influence or color how you think about those vendors and what they're offering?
It was huge. I appreciate vendors so much, like people that put in their time. It's just like what I said earlier about being involved, right? It's like it's very easy to tell who's not in it for the relationships. They're just in it for $1, right? Or an account, because there's a lack of care. They sit behind a booth and they're on their laptops and they'll
hoping nobody comes and talks to them.
Yes. And I've actually ran into vendors like that, and they'll look up every once in a while like, oh, hey, okay, bye. Yeah. Like,
You need them? You good?
Yeah,
You
you
good?
good?
Okay, yeah.
Or they don't even look up and you stand in front of them like, oh, hi. And those vendors, I don't even care what they have to sell. I'll look for someone else who's more passionate, because one, it shows that if they are truly passionate about what they have to offer, they're going to be like, hey, let me talk to you. Let's sit down, grab a coffee or grab, lunch. Let me talk to you about my service because I think it will really help you. People like that who are passionate about their own services and product. It's like, okay, if they believe in it that much, I will sit down and give them my time and listen to what they have to say. Because people who truly believe in their product are passionate. You can feel it, right?
Amen.
Yes. And then, and I know for our local Atlanta chapter, if a vendor takes the time to show up to our luncheons, to show up to our social events, we're going to do everything we can to direct our business to them. They don't have to be the cheapest in the industry. They don't even have to be the best, but just knowing that vendor is going to show up and I have that relationship with them. And if, no one's perfect. I never expect a vendor to deliver perfect service every single time. But I know that if something happens, a mistake happens, I know I can find that vendor, right?
Right.
And maybe the owner himself or herself shows up at our meetings every single time. And I know I can say, hey, this is what happened. What can we do to fix it? And that's it. That to me is so, so valuable. And I would rather give my business to that vendor than another vendor that's just like, they don't really care.
In and out.
Yeah. They pay their dues and they don't show up. And they wonder what value they get, like NARPM gives them. But you got to show up.
Yeah, I don't think this is irrational. I don't think this is warm fuzzies, kumbaya. I actually think what you're articulating is a really practical material consideration on a couple of different levels. Number one is context. People that show up have a depth of context that allows them to provide a better product, period.
So,
The
yes.
closer that you are to customer pain and the more you care about solving it, the better your stuff is going to be, whatever stripe or variety it is. And I think the other piece is what you mentioned, the accountability piece. One thing that's so great about these conventions is that it's really hard to screw somebody over. You could do it once, maybe 1.5 times.
Yes.
You ain't doing that 2 years in a row, you know?
you will not
If you
last.
misbehave, you're out of here.
Yeah.
So there's this self-policing aspect
Yes.
of it, and the people that keep showing up, like there's a reason that they keep showing up
Yeah.
and something's clearly working.
Yes, I agree. I mean, the companies that show up year after year say, okay, enough people believe in you and use your services for you to, keep coming back. And so that speaks for itself as well.
What does your NARPM chapter look like? What's the size?
The Atlanta chapter has been the large chapter of the year for a few years in a row. And we are, I believe, the largest chapter right now. We have about 308 or 9 members.
Wow.
So yes, we are the largest chapter, and the makeup of the chapter, we have a pretty strong leadership. We have about 15 people or more that participate on the board. So people get involved. Yeah.
Well, let me ask you a somewhat loaded question.
Okay.
If you could wave a magic wand and change one thing about NARPM,
Oh man.
what would it be?
Okay, we're done.
I'm putting you on the spot. But I mean, you're in it. And if this organization isn't here to serve the members and to take and acknowledge member voices, what's it here for? And of course it is. And that's part of why you joined, to make a difference. What comes to mind for you?
Well, I think you just said it is, an organization that values members' voices. And this is my first year being involved on the national side. I've always stayed within my local chapter because there's plenty to do, right? And I got involved with national, and I got to see behind the scenes for the first time, like how national leadership works. And I think there is a misconception there, right? It's like national leaders care so much about its members, like everything they do, everything they talk about, everything they spend time on is how do we make things better for our members? But the members don't know that. Mm-hmm. Every single meeting, like new things come out of that meeting and it gets implemented, like resources and tools. And the, leadership thinks about how to spend money to help chapters and help people succeed. But people don't necessarily know that. So I think if I could wave a magic wand, it would be for everyone to immediately get the knowledge in their head of everything that NARPM has to offer them. NARPM has so much. Like it blew my mind when I first learned about it, and it was just this year that I learned about it. And I've been involved with NARPM for so long.
That's incredible.
On a local level. But then I started getting involved in national. I'm like, oh my gosh, you mean we have all of these tools and resources that members and chapters can use to become better property managers, successful chapters? People just need more of that knowledge.
Well, that's it.
Yeah.
That's a good answer. More awareness.
More awareness.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I definitely believe in the mission of what NARPM is doing.
Yes.
And I the community, the communal aspect of it, the joy, isn't it just so obvious to most folks that
so good.
Content's good, speakers are great, wouldn't want to take anything from that. But the reality is, people would come if there were no speakers.
Yeah.
Yeah. If it was the same format of just networking and having conversations, people would still show up. And that says a lot about what people are getting out of it.
Yes. I spoke to somebody today, say, hey, how are you liking the conference? She said, I've been high, like, on people energy and just seeing all of my old friends since I've gotten here. It's like, I said, same. I have not slept well this whole conference, not because the bed's not comfortable, whatever. Sure. It's just every night I go to bed so excited. Like you feel so high. It's so that like so much energy.
Yeah.
And then I'm excited about the next day.
Right.
The parties that's coming up.
that we're about to go to.
In a few hours. But it's like, oh man, that party's coming up. I'm so excited. And so I can't go to sleep. Yeah. So really I'm running on no sleep right now. But that's okay. It comes with the conference. Right?
Yeah, it does.
I don't know if you experience the same thing.
It's turned into an absolute marathon. I don't know how long you've been going to conventions for. I think I'm probably on my 6th or 7th. Mm-hmm. It really has kind of mushroomed from a much smaller production to now. I mean, I think Bryn, my head of marketing, has set up like no less than 9 events that we have just around it. I'm not putting on the conference, but 9 events just around the main thing.
Yeah.
So
that's crazy.
Yeah.
It's a lot. It is a production.
No doubt.
For vendors like yourself to do all that. And I appreciate it from the bottom of my heart for everything that you guys do, because you guys, I tell people, I'm like, NARPM was not always like this.
Yeah.
It was in the most recent, 4-5 years when vendors like you guys came into our space. It's like, let us show you how to have fun.
Let's kick it up. Kick it up a couple notches.
And then all of a sudden, NARPM's like, man, I want to go. I want to be there. I want to show up. Because it was not always like this. Yeah. It was always very business, very strict. Not strict, but just, it was a conference.
Yeah.
Now it's like, gosh, it's so exciting to be here.
Yeah. Well, what a gift. I'm grateful. I'm grateful to be doing it and experiencing it with you.
Yes.
Thanks for coming on the show. I'm excited to see where your career is headed and where it takes you. And
Yes.
until next time, be well.
Thank you, Jordan.